I needed a new outdoor shed, but to have one professionally installed, well, that was a bit too pricey for my blood. So I built one. And with a savings of around $2,700, how did I do it? Well, I used this is a pallet rack. Most of the time you'll find these holding supplies in commercial applications, but today we're doing something special with it. And of course you can use them for all kinds of stuff at the home as well. I store simple materials when building projects or even helping me get up on the roof. That's another story, but today we're gonna turn it into this. This outdoor storage shed is made from the skeletal structure of one of those pallet racks. And yes, it turned out amazing and I'm very proud of it, but I do have one massive regret and more about that later. The thing is, you can do this. You can find these readily available on Marketplace or Craigslist, and this is the process on how I turned it into a storage shed. And I did the whole thing with a circular saw and a drill. Yeah. So join me as I show you step by step how I take this pallet racking system and convert it into a modern day outdoor shed. And to be completely honest, this felt amazing to get back outside and build something just following my nose with power tools. Everything went great, or not. So things didn't always go as planned, but some of these innovative design features I came up with did. As we go through the process of framing this thing out, putting the panels on, and going ahead and building a door in the simplest way possible, this is gonna be a fun build. And as I said, mistakes were made, but I show you exactly how I covered them up, and honestly, that's kind of the mark of a good craftsman. Covering up their mistakes to the best of their ability so nobody knows. We go through the process, we paint, we finish, we do it all. Even working into the wee hours of the night, this was such a great thing to get back out here and do. So, without further ado, let's get into this build and let me show you exactly how it all went together. So I told you before you could find these pallet racks on Marketplace or Craigslist. However, unfortunately, our Jacksonville Woodcraft has closed, and I got these from them at a very discounted rate, $75 a piece. So after establishing a relationship with those guys up there for the past 12 years, we were at the end of their run, and the owner decided he was going to sell everything, including those pallet racks in the back. And then, as I'm picking it up from the local Woodcraft, Jim is his name, he asked, "Hey Chris, what are you going to do with these?" And I said, "I'll just use them for outdoor storage." He goes, "You know what you should do? You should build a shed out of it." And I said, "You know what? I need a shed, and that's a great idea. Jim, thank you so much." So that's what we're doing. And you can see me here fumbling around trying to build these things together. And basically it goes together with, vertical support pieces and then these lateral supports that I thought I was gonna do, well, it just doesn't feel right. Turns out I need to put another support a little bit further down. That way when I lifted it up on its end. So this gives me a little something more to grab. I'll try it now. Gave me something to grab hold to, like I just said. It's all being, yeah. It worked. So as I put these together, I learned very quickly the more pieces that you involve, the heavier they become. And since I'm basically working by myself, it's, a little bit of a struggle. It's taller than the house. So you may have seen the asterisk by the 99% using a drill and a circular saw. Well, yeah, I used an angle grinder too. I had to go in here and cut these pieces down. Like I said in that previous clip, it's bigger than the house. But this was a fun process, and you gotta make sure you gotta cut down one side at a lower depth than the other. You want a pitch on this roof, and if you're gonna make this work, you're gonna have to have water go away from the house. So that's what I'm doing here. So now the process starts of kind of conforming these 2x4s to the shape in which I need to make this shed. You can see here I'm struggling here with a cutoff saw, a little Japanese saw. I got a better option than that, and no clue why I tried to even use that, but it worked. And I'm going to use some self-tapping screws that are going to go directly through the wood and into the metal, giving me basically a 2x4 that is completely attached to the metal racking. And you can see me still struggling with this little Japanese saw. I'll show you what I use later. But now it's time to make, well, kind of like a half lap, or at least a pseudo half lap. We're going to take off some material from this 2x4 with a circular saw. We're just going to etch away the material, and then we're going to hammer it out. And then you can sand that down flush. However, I will say this, the process of coming in here to the table saw on the sled, now I know I said drill and a circular saw, but watch, okay? You'll see later I make that exact cut with the circular saw. It's a little precarious, but I do it either way. So we're gonna make these notches, and you could of course hammer them out, you could chisel them out, whatever you want. But if you want to check this out, you can put it on your upside down sander mount, available at aglimpseinside.org, link in the description, and it works well as well. Check that out. So a lot of people would say that was a shameless plug, but I got no shame in it. I run a business where I make products for makers at that website, and I would be honored if you would go check it out to see what we're all about. Of course, the link is in the description. So with a simple 2x4 made frame on the back of the piece, we're going to go ahead and start installing some of these panels. These are pre-primed T111 from your local big box store. I thought this was actually a pretty good deal. It wasn't that much more to have them pre-primed, and it's a similar color to what we're going to go for in the final result anyway, so why not? Now there's a reoccurring theme here where every time I put something on this, it becomes heavier and heavier, and yet I still work alone. And very rarely do I take material off like we're doing here. This is the bottom of the shed. Of course, if we left this on there, it would not sit level. So we got to trim that off at a reasonable depth. Now, well, I get myself in a pickle here, buddy. Check this out. So there's nowhere to grip. I can't grip it. It's just going to slam back into the house. So I use the Grabo. You can hear it. And it's suctioned up underneath. Now I'm hoping to, whoa! Probably shouldn't have done that, but hey, we're good. Ha! Woo! So basically all of this was made yesterday afternoon. I put this together in a matter of a few hours, and now today I'm hoping to finish it. We got the sides to put on, we got the header, a door to make, and then 2 panels on the sides of the front that are going to be basically, I think, maybe, well, kind of floating, because I don't have any support at the bottom. But this thing is rigid enough for only one support at the top to be pretty strong. So let's continue. Okay, on to make the front frame, and again we're cutting out some notches to, you know, avoid some things that are protruding out from the metal. And yes, finally you use your brain and use a jigsaw. My goodness. Now, instead of using a self-tapping screw from the front, I'm going to go around the back and use some panhead screws all the way down. And of course, I'm a professional YouTuber. I always put my tool in the middle of the camera shot so you can't see what I'm doing. Genius. But anyway, you can see the result there. That's not going anywhere. It's a pretty darn good hold, and that's what I'm going with for the front. So on to continue framing the front of this, and I use my favorite non-red anodized tool. Got to show some love to the DFM tools. Those things are awesome. Anyway, here we go. We're going to take this really precarious cut. Remember that rabbet I made, or that half lap joint? Well, it's not really a half, I guess like a quarter lap. But yeah, using a circular saw, just being careful, taking my time, and we're going to trim off the material lengthwise here after we've done it through the depth, and there we go. There's our rabbet. I'm going to show you to you one more time. If you're going to do something like this, just be careful, know your saw, be vigilant, and you will have a good result. So there we go. I can still make it without using the table saw, so technically I'm still only using a drill, a circular saw, and a jigsaw and a angle grinder. But yes, hand tools all the way. And I got company. Check it out. What are you doing? Where are you going? Excuse me. If you're gonna be here, you gotta do some work. All right, hey, pick up a drill. You ready? You wanna do some work?
No.
Oh goodness. All right, see you later. Oh my goodness, if you've been a fan of the channel for a while, you know these kids used to always be here. But you know what? Now, they go to school a lot. So I'm working when they're home, but I'm doing this on the weekend. And it was awesome to have her around. Now, about what I said earlier, about a half lap, quarter lap, rabbit, whatever. Terminology, you know what? Honestly, here's a hot take. Your woodworkers have probably already gone into the comments to complain that I'm not using the right terminology. And I, for one, have never said that I am going to be a woodworker, right? I'm just a maker through and through. In fact, here's a hot take. Woodworkers just complain. They complain a lot. Hey, you didn't do this right. That's not right. Oh my goodness. Who wants to associate themselves with being a woodworker? Be a maker, right? That's all I've got to say. Anyway, hot take. What do you think about it in the comments? So, as you see me making this makeshift roof with some shop-made furring strips and yada, 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 you know, I'm going to go back to this hot take. Not all woodworkers are this way. I digress. It's mostly the ones that ruin it for the mini. It's very few that ruin it for the mini. But as you see here, this piece of plywood is it's not long enough. It's only 8 feet. So I stacked two of them together and I cut them at the same exact time, and where they're cut is going to meet in the middle, and it's going to give me the proper overhang I need for, you know, I guess what's aesthetically pleasing or what's better for the elements. I'm not really sure. In no way, shape, or form am I expert building a shed here. Like I've said from the beginning, I'm following my nose here, and here we go so far. Now this is the back of the shed. Now I want to keep the space even, so I use a spacer block, and then I come up here and I nail everything in place through those furring strips. I did have the forethought to go ahead and mark my piece of plywood where the furring strips were. That way I wasn't shooting too blindly in there, and everything worked out pretty well. Now it's time to install the galvanized roof panels, but before we do that, we got to put some fascia board up. I think that's what it's called. And I'm using this stuff called Thick-So from Total Boat. It's basically a thickened epoxy, and you can see me using a standard caulk gun with it. And we're going to just put a bead down, and it's going to give us kind of like a watertight seal on these furring strips. I figured why not? I'm not doing a full vapor barrier here, but I wanted to try this product out. It seems to work pretty well. Everything linked down below for Total Boat will be there in the description too if you want to check them out. They've been a huge long-time sponsor since probably 2018. And I want to thank them for kind of hanging in there with me, and go check them out. They got good stuff. So I've stacked about 7 of these galvanized sheets on top of each other, and I'm going to take all of them out with one pass. This took a minute, about 60 seconds or so to run through. And once I got them the length they needed, it's time to go up top and, you know, install them with a little overhang of each one, making sure the corrugations overlap. That way you get a nice watertight seal. And I'm using these self-tapping screws with washers that have basically a washer and a gasket combined, so everything stays watertight. Now, onto the panels. This is a really cool trick. I use an old piece of plywood as a storyboard. So if I need a piece that's 82 by 24, like this is, I have the marks on the storyboard. Then I could take my 2x4s or what have you to the storyboard, and I'm done measuring. I basically cut everything I need to fit those marks. And when you're done, you have a repeatable way, kind of in the field, to make things over and over again. So get yourself a scrap piece of plywood from the cull section at your Home Depot or Lowe's, and then use it as a storyboard like I've done here. It works really well. So these are basic wall panels made from 2x4s that are going to go in the front of the shed. I'm using a few spacer sticks to install the lateral supports that are just going to be screwed in place. And something a little interesting happened. I figured I'd throw an Easter egg. Check it out. So I have this idea. I'm going to take a spacer like this, made from 1/8" plywood. Okay, and we're going to tack it on. But a little Easter egg. Why not? You know. The least I could do is, you know, make it. There you go. So a custom spacer, way overkill. It was actually just the piece I had, but let's get back to it. So basically I cut one of my 2x4s a little too short, and that was the overkill method to basically make it the right space. Don't want a warped panel, okay? Now, here's the trick. I need to install something that's gonna give this wall support at the bottom where the door is gonna basically either latch or it's going to hinge to. So here is my idea. I'm going to take a nut. You're going to see it here. It's a black nut from one of the big box stores. They have this new section of all these black nuts and bolts, really heavy duty. And of course, because I didn't have the forethought to do this while it wasn't attached, I'm using a little Total Boat CA glue to tack it in place and then give it a whack. And there we go. It's embedded. Now, the corresponding bolt that's going to go through that nut, I'm going to go ahead and cut a slot in so I can turn it left and right with a flathead. And you're going to see here, it goes in just so, and it's going to take forever to do it by hand. You might as well bust out the drill, and there you go. Now there's a foot that's going to be able to be raised and lowered to support the front of the shed. So basically what I'm going to do here is I'm going to clamp it at the top, and I'm going to use that adjustable foot I just made to get everything nice and square and level. This process worked so well. I'm not shocked, but I'm, you know, hey, pat on the back. What I thought initially would work, did work, and as a maker, sometimes that's a victory. And now we're just going to go ahead and finish screwing in the panel to the side. And both sides have that adjustable foot as well, just so you know. Oh, here's a little tip. If you want to really screw something in at a 45-degree angle like this, almost like a pocket screw, start your drill backwards and then drive it in, and then you're good to go. Pretty cool trick. Now, we're not using track saws here. You probably noticed that. Standard circular saws. You know, real makers can cut a straight line without any help, and if it looks straight, it's straight. Besides, who in the world would own like every brand of track saw and then put them on a prominent display using really nice French cleat brackets above their work surfaces? I mean, I have no clue who would do that. I guess that's the way he drew it up, you know? He just drew it up and decided to put them up there. All kidding aside, congratulations to Drew Witt for eclipsing 100,000 subscribers. Well done, my friend, well done. All right, it's the next day, and now it's time to focus on this door. And it's back to the storyboard piece of scrap wood. I've got my measurement that I need for the door, and I've got my lines all drawn all the way around using a drywall square. And basically, if I just build a door within these lines perfectly, it should fit perfectly. That's the theory. So let's do it. So you know what? I got some prefabricated sheds on the property. We're going to go ahead and look over here at these doors, get some inspiration. And are you kidding me? Staples? No way. There's got to be a better way. My goodness. Yeah, I can do way better than that. Okay, well, I don't know about way better, but I'm going to do something what I think is better. It's not going to be like half-lap joinery or anything like that. I'm going to use some plates, basically. But first, it's worth noting that I think the best success is going to happen because I'm going to actually adhere one of these 2x4s directly to the storyboard. That way nothing can shift, nothing can move around. Now onto these galvanized plates. These are going to be typically in your framing section or your roofing section, where you can buy roof panels, corrugated roof panels, that kind of thing at the big box store. And I'm going to use all of these in the four corners, and for a little added insurance, I'm going to buy also a few of these 90-degree brackets. You'll see me install these here as well. Make sure everything's lined up square. Use the speed square. That's all you're going to need. And then just drive these screws home. Pretty easy. You don't need a whole lot of technical skill to do this. As long as things are square, you're good to go. And again, those were those 90-degree brackets I was talking about. And then the middle support, I'm going to use something a little different. This is a plate that has little spikes already in it. And there you go. Hammer it home. Drive a couple screws. Beautiful. Okay, once we get this door flipped around, it's time to cut down our panel. This is the T111 that was pre-primed, like I mentioned before. We're going to put the door directly on it. And really easily, I'm just going to trace it. I mean, this may seem like, I don't know, too rudimentary sometimes, but hey, why not? If it works, it works. Again, no track saws here. I'm not going to get into that one more time for you. I'll just leave it as it is. But yeah, I like using this circular saw. I've used a circular saw for a long time, and it just feels right at home when I'm making projects like this, for sure. Making sure everything's lined up at the corners, and then we're just going to tack that on with some brad nails. Okay, yes, I'm in the shop, and yes, I'm using my table saw. I am cutting all of the extra 2x4s I bought down into 1x4s. So get this. A 2x4 is $3.50. A 1x4 of the same length is $7. So, it's twice as much for half the wood. I'll just do twice as much work and save quadruple the money. Make sense? So I'm making my own 1x4s out of 2x4s. And I'm doing this on the table saw. Granted, you probably shouldn't do this with a circular saw. You should just buy 1x4s, if at all possible, if you don't have a table saw. But I do, and I'm saving a little bit of money this way, but not a necessity. So, because I milled up my own 1x4s from cheap 2x4s that notoriously move and twist, I am going to take a little bit of added insurance and use some of that Fixo thickened epoxy as well to go ahead and adhere the frame, or the trim, down to the frame. Don't need a whole bunch. And this may or may not work as well as I think it's going to work, but I think it gives it the best chance in order to keep it from moving instead of just using, brad nails. And I found a big split or a big crack in the 1x4 face frame, and it gives me an opportunity to use some of that Fixo to kind of fill in the gap and make sure that's nice and solid, because we're going to paint this white eventually. But yeah, this works pretty well. So we're going to repeat the same process to put the middle piece down on the door decorative frame on the outside. And then we're going to work our way around the structure using those 1x4s that were shop made, of course. Saved a little bit of money there. And we're going to just go ahead and start the process to trim the whole thing out. Now, because there is a slight pitch on the roof, we're going to have to cut a small angle I just did this by eye, not that important, honestly. And it turned out pretty well. Now you can see there's going to be, where those furring strips are, there's going to be a gap at the top. And that's just kind of going to be for ventilation. I did do that on purpose, believe it or not. I didn't want this thing to be completely sealed at the top because, you know, hot air escapes from the top of these structures and it's not going to be heated or cooled. I mean, the thing is so small. There's no reason you would do that. And now we've got the door in place. I didn't film this process, or I kind of did, but I was getting frustrated, but finally I got it. And hey, you want to come see? Anyway. I've got a couple of shims in here. I'm gonna put the hinges on, so know that it was tough for one person. I should have had somebody on the inside help me out, but we got it. So true fans of the channel know that my kids have been in videos for years, and this one has been awesome that they're in there too. But anyone want to guess how many takes that last clip took? I'll tell you what, put a number and an orange heart emoji and leave it down in the comment section. That way I know you're a Glimpse Inside faithful and that you've been here for a while. I would really appreciate that. So at this point, the door, of course, comes open because it's on a downgraded slope, but we're going to mitigate all that with some hardware. I like this beefy hardware. I picked this up at the big box store. Pretty easy to install. And, you know, remember those kids again? Here we go. Check it out. Here. Say, watch this.
No, that wasn't it. Ah!
Try it again.
No.
Go.
No, end it.
End it?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I said. Where you going? Get your gloves. Oh. Okay, back to the project. So I've got a stack of fender washers here that I glued together with some of the CA glue. The reason I'm doing that is because, well, the door is just a little thicker than I anticipated, and I need to protrude out, the gate latch mechanism. So those fender washers are kind of a lifesaver. It kind of looks like a lifesaver too. To get this thing to protrude out a little bit, so that way when you install the actual arm bar that goes across and nestles inside that latch, it's an easy fit. You don't want to be struggling with this thing, and you don't want anything to kind of, I don't know, man. These things can be finicky over time, but it worked. It worked great. And I was really pleased with this little fender washer fix that I came up with, and almost too pleased. What are you doing? However, there is one danger, and someone could get locked inside of this cabinet, and that's not a good thing. So I have these drill bits that are 12 inches long. I bought a set from, I don't even know where, maybe a garage sale years ago, and they were perfect for something like this because I have to go through, I don't know, 6 inches of wood, and it was awesome. So some 50-pound test or whatever this fishing line is, and it's going to be all I need. In case you get trapped in there, you're able to let yourself out. We're going to attach another one of those fender washers on there, and you're good to go. I have my phone, okay, but I'm going to put myself in danger here and see if this works. Ooh, it's dark. Yeah, buddy. Okay, now we're in the home stretch. We're finalizing the last piece of trim. We're going to go ahead and caulk all the seams and get ready for paint. So I actually like this process quite a bit. Caulking all the seams, getting it ready for paint, making sure it's all nice. Now, when I first started using this stuff years ago, I was an absolute mess. I would always use too much. It would get all over my fingers. I didn't have the proper technique, but now I think it's pretty good, and I actually enjoy this process. Now, painting, on the other hand, I don't really particularly like painting still. Now, I'm using the trick now where you put the blue tape on, and it's supposed to not get paint in the groove so you can seal it back, but I use the entire gallon, so what's it matter? So with this dark gray paint all over the shed now, it is called Up in Smoke, by the way, from the Home Depot. I asked my friends at Total Boat, what do you recommend for like a white paint, a really high gloss white? They said definitely use our Wet Edge. It's a topside paint, basically an oil-based paint, which means you got to clean it up with mineral spirits, and that's not a big deal, but you got to take your time here. Be patient, keep a wet edge, hence the name, which means go slow and make sure whatever you're painting on has a wet edge on it, and you will have impeccable results. It does feel like a waterproof membrane is on the trim on this outside structure now, and I can't recommend it enough, so links are in the description. And okay, that's enough of watching someone paint. It's the next day, and we got a little bit of a situation. Got a little problem here. I realized I kind of built the rock too big. I can't even pick it up now. I need to move it back. I'm going to try something with some 2x4s and a pallet jack, see if that works. That's all I got for now. Let's see. So without me calling 4 of my friends over here to move this thing. Trying to do this by myself is what I got. So the 2x4s are going to lift up on the edges, and it looks like it's going to work, although something's not quite right. So yeah, I had to clean out from behind it, which is fine. But then, shit. Everything's okay, and that's actually the least of my worries, because there's another problem. So as I pick up these pieces here, I have no clue about what's about to happen. I realized that all my efforts to measure this thing, I was wrong. That far. That's the distance that the roof hit the gutters. I mean, the gutters are kind of crap anyway. I probably should just remove them. Not really doing much. It was a cheap install. We'll try that. Hopefully this works. So let's bring it on back, and we're going to try to remove these gutters, and hopefully this is as painless as it was to put them up. That was nerve-wracking, I'm going to lie. But look at that. Plenty of room. Let's take those gutters down. And upon cleaning up, well, look at this. It's growing in the gutter. My goodness. Okay, let's start this over one more time. Oh, I'm not even there yet. Okay, so the issue is that it wants to lean forward when I pick it up. Let's fix that. What was that? Oh, the light! Okay. I would say that's a success in moving this thing. And if you have any reservations about it being so close to the house, I don't care. Take these screws up and... Are you kidding me? Really? Look at this. So after doing some gutter removal, yeah, there's my drill. And like I said, it's the next day, and after everything's finally in its place, we're going to put on the third final coat of this wet edge. Now, I did try to pressure wash some of this. I got to get up on their roof and clean all this stuff off, but that's a different topic altogether. And it's time to put that last coat of wet edge on there, and this thing's coming together pretty nicely. Except for that my painting skills are not that great. And you would think I would have, I don't know, maybe taken more time, but I did, honestly. This still happened. My goodness, you can tell I don't paint every day. But we're going to try to fix that. So I did pick up some black enamel in the can, not in spray paint form, to fix some of my problem areas. Now this looks like it's going on a different color, but as my hand casts a shadow over it, you can see it is pretty jet black. And I'm not sure why I picked the absolute smallest brush to paint on a shed, but this was a really satisfying process to me as well, trying to be careful. Wasn't as careful as I probably should have been. I decided, look, let's just do the blue tape thing and get on with our lives. I did that, and it turned out pretty nice. I ended up deciding to paint the entire hardware black, and it looks kind of funny going on, but it dried to a really nice flat matte finish. Now, I'm using Carbon Methods Carbon Coat again. The reason I'm doing it this time is because these tools are what's going to be stored in this shed for the next 3 months. I've got a few things happening in the shop. I need a little extra room, and I want these tools to go out here, and I'm going to protect the cast iron with the carbon coat. First step you're going to do, I've done a video on this before, but it's worth repeating. You're going to do a carbon cleanse. You're going to get rid of all the impurities. You're going to let that dry. Then you're going to come back with the carbon coat, and you're going to put a nano film on it to protect it not only from rust, but also it helps with anti-friction. This stuff is great. It's been on my table saw for over a year, and I have not needed to apply it again. And again, I'm in Florida down here, and there is no rust whatsoever. So I'd be curious to see how this is going to perform in an unair-conditioned, dark environment that is somewhat exposed to the elements because there is no floor on this shed. So it will be a great test for sure. So speaking of sticking around for the next 3 months, if you think I've earned your subscription, I would be honored if you would subscribe to my channel. And also don't forget to smash the like button or like the smash button, whatever you want to do. This is a pretty cool experiment. We are in the Florida heat. It's going to be in the middle of summer. It's going to be in an unair conditioned, small, tight, cramped area. How well will the carbon coat hold on? Well, only time will tell. Like I said, if you think I've earned it, hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much, everyone. Now, earlier in this video, I said this. I do have one massive regret, and more about that later. And what I meant by that is that my biggest regret was I didn't sister these two things together to form a shed that was 8 feet long. I just didn't think of it until the time. Now, the price I quoted you in the beginning is doing exactly that. So you can find these on Marketplace and Craigslist for really cheap and build a massive shed for pennies on the dollar of what it would cost you to have them professionally installed. So yeah, that's my biggest regret. But off to find another one of these, because I think on the other side of the house, I'm gonna do this, but even bigger. And the last tool cabinet is going in, and it could not have been a tighter fit, quite frankly. That was a happy accident. Glad it worked out. And the concept of turning one of these pallet racks into a shed turned out pretty nice. And it's also pretty close to the shop as well. Of course, all those tools will be in there just for the summer. I'm keeping them there to restructure some things in the shop. Stay tuned for that. And what would you store in there? Eventually, I'm going to be keeping garden tools, lawn mowers, rakes, shovels, hose, all that kind of good stuff. So what would you store in there? I'm curious to know. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you later.